What's up guys? Welcome back to the channel Hand Waving. Your friend Naruto Addict 2.0 is here again with a brand new Naruto fanfic that's going to change everything. Today's fanfic is titled, What If Naruto Was Betrayed by Sasuke, Saved by Hinata, and Raised by Kakashi's Regret? Part 1. Let's start this fanfic. Hitaki Kakashi speeds through the forest with urgency and haste, as one of his students Uzumaki Naruto lies dying in his arms. He glances down at his student covered in blood, with a distinctive hole in his chest that could only have been left by the Chidori technique, Kakashi's technique. Damn you Sasuke, and damn myself for teaching you this. He mutters in a voice filled both with anger as well as guilt. Using slight hand movements and voice activation, he increases his chakra even further to gain additional speed as he heads toward Konoha. A rasping gurgling sound reaches his ears, and he looks down again and sees that the bleeding has slowed considerably. No doubt helped by the power of the Kyuubi demon contained within Naruto's body. In fact, it was probably the only reason Naruto wasn't dead. Kakashi shook his slightly head in disbelief. The Leaf Village's greatest enemy and a source of pain and heartache for Naruto his entire life was the only thing keeping him alive. At that moment, Kakashi actually felt grateful for this demon and its powers. Gratitude from a Leaf Villager for me, a voice boomed into Kakashi's head. Startled at this occurrence, Kakashi pauses for a moment. Keep running you fool, unless you want this brat to die in your worthless arms. Kyuubi shouts inside Kakashi's head. Shocked back into reality, Kakashi once again accelerates towards the village. However, he is concerned about what has just transpired. Kyuubi sensing this laughs, which brings a sense of dread to Kakashi. Worry not, copy ninja, I have need of you at the moment, which overrides any desire I might have to kill you. Kyuubi says in a more subdued tone. You have need of me? Kakashi queries, anxious to hear the nine-tailed fox's answer. At the moment, yes, quite simply you are this brat's only hope of survival, and along that perhaps mine as well. Even if you did have a part in this boy's current condition. Kakashi's anger quickly flares, and in his mind he shouts. Shut up, monster. I care a great deal about this child, I would never hurt him. Liar. Kyuubi growls. Kakashi's anger begins to boil and he begins to argue with Kyuubi in his mind, only to be interrupted by Kyuubi's thunderous voice. Quiet, you insignificant fool, be mindful of whom you address, or I'll cease my chakra flow to this child that you care so much about, and you can watch him wither and die in a matter of seconds. Kakashi, realizing this was not an idle threat, instantly began to clam down as was befitting his normal behavior and stated. I apologize, great Kyuubi. I spoke in haste without thinking. Yes you did, Kyuubi growled. Kakashi, wishing to change the subject, quickly asks, how are you able to communicate with me, mighty one? Cease you insincere flattery, it is insulting and infuriates my being even more towards you. I'm sorry Kyuubi, a repentant Kakashi replies. Kyuubi, sensing Kakashi's repentance, says, I will answer your question as it does pertain to the current situation of this kid in your arms. I have always been able to sense the thoughts and feelings of those who this child considers important. However, this cursed seal that the fourth Hokage placed me under, that is all I could ever do. Only when this vessel's life force is weakened, and hence the seal is weakened, am I able to exert more of my influence, shall we say. And since this child has never been closer to death as he is at this moment, this is the first time I have actually been able to speak to someone in the world of the living. And you've chosen to speak to me, why? Kakashi asks. You're the only one here, idiot, and besides, as I've said, you have a usefulness at the moment. Kakashi, feeling emboldened by this statement, makes a mistake in dealing with Kyuubi that he will always regret, and says. You honor me, Kyuubi. Honor you, honor you. Kyuubi screams at Kakashi, causing a violent stab of pain in his head. Kakashi stumbles in reaction to the pain, but keeps his balance and continues forward as best he can. If I had no need of you right now, I would kill you as painfully as I could. I don't honor you, you are simply here. Now, you will answer a series of questions for me, since you chose to dispute my earlier suggestion that you had a hand in this boy's current condition. You will answer all of my questions truthfully, and remember I can sense in you any lie you may wish to convey. If that happens, I'll cease my chakra and this boy will die. The last sentence Kyuubi uttered was like a slap to the face for Kakashi, the pain in his head swiftly disappearing. I accept your conditions, Kyuubi, Kakashi replies. You have no choice, Kyuubi growls confidently. Kakashi braces himself. He doesn't know what to expect from this, but he knows enough to believe that it won't be pleasant. First question, Kyuubi asks. This boy's injury was caused by the Chidori technique, your technique, yes. Yes, Kakashi answers, but I didn't use this on. Quiet, Kyuubi snaps, I know this, but you taught this most deadly technique to the one who did use it on him, didn't you? Yes, I did, Kakashi solemnly answers. But you didn't teach the technique to this child, why not? I don't know, Kakashi replies. That is a lie, a penalty will now be assessed. Kyuubi says, and with that he stops his chakra flow on Naruto. Like a dam bursting, blood explodes from the hole in his chest, splashing Kakashi in the face. Kakashi immediately stops and attempts to repack the wound, but it is like trying to hold back the tide. In a panic he screams. Stop this, Kyuubi, I'll answer the question truthfully, I swear. Penalty rescinded, Kyuubi says, and with a thought the torrent of blood coming from Naruto's chest becomes a trickle once again. Kakashi upon seeing this lifts Naruto up once again and quickens his pace back to the village. Kakashi feels a sense of relief that Naruto is still alive. I wouldn't get to comfortable copy ninja, Kyuubi chuckles. A couple more penalties and even Tsunade won't be able to fix anything on a corpse. I'm sure you're counting on the slug to save this child's life. But, why dwell on what ifs? Now back to my question, why didn't you teach the Chidori to this boy? Kakashi pauses for a moment before answering, because his answer is very painful to admit. I didn't teach Naruto the Chidori because I didn't believe he had the talent to learn it. Yes, let's touch upon that subject right now, Kyuubi hissed. What subject? Kakashi asks. Your belief and support in one Naruto Uzumaki. Kakashi winces under his mask. In his mind he has been struggling with how things could have been different ever since he found Naruto after his battle with Sasuke. He didn't think Kyuubi was reading his mind, but perhaps he was picking up on some of the regret Kakashi was feeling. What did you do when the third Hokage assigned to you the 3 students you were to train as genin? Kyuubi asks. Kakashi pauses once again, only longer this time annoying Kyuubi. Answer the question. Ashamed, Kakashi answers, I requested that he assign me another student instead of Naruto. Why? Demanded Kyuubi. Because I didn't think he was worth the time it would take to make him into a quality genin, let alone anything past that. But I was wrong, how is it you know of this? Not just me, Kyuubi chuckled, the kid knew it too. He took it upon himself to sneak under the floorboards in the Hokage's office when the students were being assigned. Impossible, our Hokage Sarutobi would have sensed his presence even hidden. Kakashi shot back. Well, I guess you can blame me for that one. The kid was so excited about being trained by actual Junin, I masked his chakra from detection with my own. I don't know why I did it, out of boredom I guess. He was just so anxious to know because his only friend Iruka had talked about one Junin in particular that the kid could learn a lot from. Want to take a guess who that Junin was that this brat was so hopeful he would be assigned to? Kakashi could feel his heart begin to race even faster than it had been. He did not want to hear this answer. Kyuubi, sensing this and trying to stifle his laughter, said, That's right, Kakashi, it was you. Unable to contain his amusement any longer, Kyuubi burst forth laughing hysterically. Confused, Kakashi thought that Kyuubi must have been lying. If Naruto had truly known any of this, why would he accept Kakashi as his sensei? Kyuubi, sensing doubt coming from the ninja, said, If you're wondering why the brat chose to stay with you after hearing your request, he just used it as motivation. He was going to prove to you and everyone else that he did have talent and would earn your respect or die trying. Well, at least he got the dying part right, Kyuubi said with a sneer. Kakashi knew that Kyuubi was telling him the truth. If you could say anything about Naruto, he never thought about giving up no matter what the cost or adversity placed before him. Next question. Kyuubi growls, snapping Kakashi out of his thoughts. You begrudgingly began to train Naruto along with the traitor and that pink-haired bitch that this kid is so fond of. By the way, be grateful she isn't here at the moment. She also is to blame for this brat's current crisis, even more than you perhaps. If she were around, I would take great pleasure in granting her a very long and painful death. Kakashi did not like hearing a threat against another of his students makes another mistake with Kyuubi. Is there a question, or do you enjoy threatening an innocent kunoichi? Another shot of intense pain followed that statement with Kyuubi's voice echoing in his head. Do not test my patience, ninja fool, and as for the innocent, she isn't in this affair. For the third and he hoped last time, Kakashi found himself apologizing to Kyuubi in as humble a tone as he could muster. Kyuubi, satisfied with the copy ninja's contrition, asks. When you were training these three whelps, did you share your time equally with all of them? Kakashi simply stated, no. You trained the other two more fervently than you did Naruto, especially the one who may have killed this brat, yes. Yes, was all Kakashi could meekly state. When this kid actually made it through the preliminary Chunin exam, were you proud or surprised, copy ninja? Kakashi remembered that day vividly. He said to Kyuubi. Both. Kyuubi then growled in contempt. But that wasn't enough for you, was it? When this kid came to you for additional training for the final exams, what did you do? Kakashi didn't answer, prodding Kyuubi in disgust to state. I'll tell you what you did. You pawned him off onto that preening fool of a Junin Ebisu to train him instead. Tell me, what were your reasons for that, and remember, I'll know if you lie, and you can say goodbye to this kid right now. Kakashi remembered how hurt Naruto was that day. He knew the answer to this question, and saying it would be like a kunai to his heart. I chose to focus my attention and additional training on Sasuke, because I believed Naruto had no hope of defeating Neji Hyuga no matter how much training I gave him. In my mind, Sasuke had the talent to move on in the exams, not Naruto. In the strictest terms of ninjutsu, Sasuke was like me. Yes, you shared that thought with Naruto during that traitor's match with the sand brat. Tell me, did you give any thought to how that made this kid feel when you said it? Kyuubi asks. No, I didn't, Kakashi woefully says. No, you didn't. Nor did you give any thought to his well-being when you sent him after your precious Sasuke during the Sound and Orochimaru's attack on your village. Your only concern was that Sasuke might get hurt fighting the sand brat, yes. Kakashi couldn't answer anymore. Tears were beginning to surface in his eyes. He looked down once again at the boy he was carrying in his arms, barely clinging to life. Kyuubi had succeeded in bringing out what Kakashi has been trying to bury since the start of his race back to Konoha. He had failed this child time and time again, and it was now tearing him up inside. This kid, this number one hyperactive knucklehead ninja, had always remained loyal and true to his sensei. His sensei, on the other hand, had not returned those feelings, instead giving that which Naruto craved the most to a traitor and now perhaps a murderer. What a fool I have been, the despair ringing in Kakashi's voice as he said it. Inwardly, Kyuubi smiled upon hearing this. He had forced this Junin to face some unbearable truths about himself. Granted, he had done this for his own amusement. If I can't kill any more leaf villagers, I can still hurt them when I get the chance. However, the strain of keeping this kid alive was starting to deplete even Kyuubi's immense chakra. The injury was very severe, and he knew he couldn't stave off death for much longer. He had to act quickly, and he knew of only one thing he could do at that time. Kakashi, Kyuubi growled. You've done well to make it this far as fast as you have. You must have copied at some point Guy made his speed, but I'm afraid it's not enough. I'm going to grant you a small amount of my own chakra. This will increase your speed beyond what any human has traveled before. You will live through it, but it will be painful. There is a catch, however. I can only give you this chakra if you agree to accept it. What say you, copy ninja? Kakashi looked upon Naruto once again. He was barely breathing and his pulse was almost non-existent. Kyuubi wasn't lying. Naruto would soon be dead unless he got him to Tsunade immediately. Looking up, he could see the outskirts of the village, but it was still miles away. He knew there was no decision to be made, it was already decided. Yes, do it, I grant you permission, great Kyuubi. As you wish, but remember I told you it would be painful. And with that, Kyuubi began to transfer a portion of his own chakra into Kakashi. The scream Kakashi let out would echo for miles, but if he could weather the pain, he would reach Konoha in a matter of minutes. The shinobi guards at the main gate of Konoha felt a chakra pressure approaching before they actually saw what was coming. Such an immense force coming closer by the second immediately put them on high alert, and they stood ready for battle if necessary. Out of the distant forest they saw a multicolored blur exit and head straight for them at an indescribable speed. It would be at the gate in a matter of seconds. Immediately they raised their hands to activate their jutsus to halt whatever was approaching. Kakashi, upon seeing this, grumbled to himself. I have no time for this, as he withdrew several kunai and launched them at the guards. Before the guards could complete their hand signs for jutsu activation, they suddenly found their hands pierced by kunais pinning them to the Konoha walls supporting the gate. A scant few seconds later, Kakashi crashed through the heavily fortified gate as if it were paper. Still running at amazing speed, Kakashi sped down the main street, the power he was generating causing carts and people to tumble over from the tailwind that followed him. Further up the street, Yamanaka Ino was dragging along a very nervous Hyuga Hinata, another of the Rookie 9, to the local clothing store. She had surmised along with several others Hinata's long-standing crush on Naruto, and convinced her some new clothes might get Naruto's attention when he got back from his latest mission. She and Hinata both heard a strange commotion coming down the street towards them. They both moved to the side, and suddenly Kakashi appeared at the main intersection, pausing, as he looked left and right. Ino and Hinata saw he was carrying something in his arms, something orange and red with blonde hair. As Kakashi turned to head towards the Konoha hospital, they caught a brief glimpse of the blood-stained face and body Kakashi was holding. A second later, Kakashi had sped off again, leaving the two kunoichi in a state of astonishment. Was that Naruto? A bewildered Ino asks. Hinata couldn't answer. Her throat had suddenly become very dry and tears were beginning to well up in her eyes. Naruto-kun was all she could think before her legs gave out from under her and she fell to the ground. Upon seeing her friend's reaction to what they had just seen, Ino knew the answer to her question. Reaching down to help her friend back to her feet, Ino looked up to see where the blur of Kakashi was heading. She knew immediately where he was going and said, "Come on, Hinata, we have to get to the hospital right now." At the hospital, Tsunade, the legendary medic Sanin and 5th Hokage, exits a room where she has been overseeing the operation to save Neji Hyuga's life after his battle with the Sound Ninja Kidomaru from the Sasuke mission. Before that, it was a touch-and-go situation with Choji and his injuries from the battle with the Sound Ninja Jirobu. Choji had given everything he had in the fight, including digesting an Akimichi red food pill that gave him incredible chakra strength, but with a price, quite possibly his life. Tsunade had managed to save both Neji and Choji, but was exhausted from the ordeal. She begins to let Shikamaru and Kiba, both with minor injuries from the mission, the status of their comrades and that they should go home and rest. Shizune, the elite medic nin and right hand of Tsunade, was about to suggest that the 5th Hokage also get some rest when Kakashi burst through the doors with Naruto in his arms. A look of shock and horror appears on everyone's face when they see the condition Naruto is in. Tsunade screams, "What happened to my Naruto-kun? Never mind, give him to me and get the ICU ready right now." Kakashi and Tsunade place Naruto on a gurney and he is immediately rushed into the next room, leaving a stunned group of Chunin and one somber Junin in its wake. A few moments later, two more Junin, Yuahi Kurenai and Sarutobi Asuma, appear in the waiting room outside ICU. They had come when they felt an unknown chakra heading towards the hospital where their injured students were. They both turn towards Kakashi, as they feel the power emanating from him. Kakashi is about to explain what has happened when Ino and Hinata arrive, out of breath but otherwise fine. A few moments later, Junin Gai Maeda makes his usual grand entrance, ready to do battle with whatever this chakra he was feeling is coming from. Rock Lee, his student whom he visits at the hospital every day, followed him closely. All three of the Junin looked nervously at Kakashi as they could sense the power from him. Kakashi, realizing that Kyuubi was still channeling some of his chakra to him, asks him to stop as they have succeeded in their joint endeavor. Kyuubi quietly growls to Kakashi, "As you wish, copy ninja." Kakashi immediately collapses to the floor, his legs on fire in pain, unable to support him. Kurenai, Guy, and Asuma immediately rush to him to lift him into a chair. Kakashi weakly thanks them as he is also having difficulty catching his breath at the moment. In the meantime, Tenten and Shino Aburame arrive after hearing that their teammates had been injured on the Sasuke retrieval mission. The overriding question on everyone's mind was, what was going on? They all turned to Kakashi for an answer, who was beginning to regain some of his strength. As Kakashi was about to begin with an explanation, he spied the three sand ninjas Tamari, Gaara, and Kankuro in the background. Tsunade had requested their help a few days ago when no progress reports came back to her about the mission. Their help was needed and appreciated by Kakashi, but he wasn't ready to share the information he had with these former enemies recently turned allies. Tamari sensed this and her brothers quietly left the hospital. She and Shikamaru exchanged a longing look towards one another as she left. It would take time to earn the Leaf Village's trust and vice versa as far as she was concerned. Gaara and Kankuro could care less, they both just wanted to go home. As Kakashi watched the sand ninja leave, he scanned the room and saw that most of the people close to Naruto were here. He did note that a certain pink-haired kunoichi had failed to arrive, bringing a moment of ire to Kakashi. Guy's booming voice brought him out of his train of thought and Kakashi said, "Well, I see the gang's virtually all here. Which is good because I don't want to explain what has happened more than once," his voice sounding very tired and irritable. As he was about to begin, Tsunade barges into the room and yells for the medic nins who had helped save Neji to get in the other room and help her with Naruto. Shizune followed closely behind and informed her that those nin had used up their chakra on Neji and were of no use at the moment. Tsunade, seething with anger, said, "Shizune, you and I have depleted our own chakra to such an extent that the two of us are no longer strong enough right now to save Naruto. We need at least one other person with strong chakra control. Where is Sakura?" "Below board brow isn't here," quipped Ino. "Damn it, of all the times for her to disappear," Tsunade angrily spats. Kurenai speaks, offering her services to help. Being the genjutsu mistress of Konoha, everyone knew of her superb chakra control. Tsunade appreciates the offer but tells her no, as she has also depleted her chakra considerably from earlier that day in helping to heal Shikamaru and Kiba. Kurenai then proposes that she knows of another who has both strength and chakra control to help Tsunade and Shizune in saving Naruto. "Who?" demands Tsunade. "Hinata," Kurenai says. "Me." Hinata softly speaks. Her hand immediately begins twirling one of her bangs in nervous apprehension. Kurenai kneels down in front of her anxious student and says, "Hinata, you can do this. You've become much stronger since the Chunin exams and I've been teaching you medical jutsus for several months now. You have learned it very quickly and seem to be a natural medic nin waiting to be born." "I don't know, sensei, what if my knowledge and strength fail?" Hinata nervously asks. "Then Naruto will die," Kurenai says in a stern voice. Like a slap to the face, Hinata realizes that Naruto needs her now more than ever. She will not let him die before he knows how she feels about him. In a voice filled with a new confidence and determination, she turns to Tsunade and Shizune and says, "Let's go save Naruto," and she turns and marches into the ICU room with Shizune following behind. Tsunade chuckles a little bit and says to Kurenai, "A brave girl, but this operation may also put her life at risk if she isn't strong enough." "I know Lady Tsunade, she is strong enough, I guarantee it," Kurenai says with confidence. Tsunade turns to Kakashi and the rest of the group and says, "This operation will take a while, you all had better make yourself comfortable." By the way, Naruto's injury was caused by the Chidori technique. Whose technique is that? That's Kakashi's technique, Guy says innocently before realizing his mistake in an instant as the right hand of Tsunade comes flying towards Kakashi's head. You filthy bastard. Tsunade screams as her fist connects with Kakashi's jaw, sending him flying across the room into the far wall. Fortunately, Kakashi had managed to partially block the punch at the last instant. Had he not, he was quite sure that the blow would have severed his head from his body. As it was, his jaw had been broken and he was currently spitting out some of his teeth in a bloody mess. Suan glared angrily at the coughing Junin across the room and was about to strive forth and finish the job when Shizune yelled from the other room. Lady Tsunade, we need you in here right now. I'll deal with you later, Kakashi, and you'd better pray my Naruto-kun lives. Tsunade angrily says and marches into the other room where Naruto is. Guy, Kurenai, and Asuma once again help Kakashi to a chair. Kurenai approaches and is about to attempt to heal Kakashi's jaw with a bone-mending jutsu she knows, but Kakashi catches her hand in his and feebly says, "No," grimacing in pain. However, even through the pain of speaking, Kakashi can't help but notice how soft Kurenai's hand feels in his or how beautiful her face is staring into his. Kurenai too is feeling a bit disheveled as she marvels at the man sitting in front of her. Even under his mask she can discern a strong masculine face, and his eyes are, in particular his Sharingan eye, very closely resembles her own crimson orbs, before he slides his Hayate down to cover it again. Both of them snapping out of their thoughts at the same time, Kakashi painfully says. You heard Tsunade, you've already used a lot of chakra today in healing others, don't waste any more on me. Shut up, Kakashi, Kurenai playfully scolds him. I'll use my chakra as I see fit, and besides, if I don't heal this jaw, how are we ever going to find out about what in the hell is going on? Kakashi was about to argue further, but he reluctantly realized the lovely Junin in front of him wouldn't back down. You have a point, please do what you can but don't overexert yourself, Kakashi mumbles. Kurenai smiles and places her palm on Kakashi's broken jaw and begins to channel some chakra to start mending the broken bones. As she is doing this, she muses over the fact that Kakashi is more worried about Kurenai depleting more of her chakra than getting himself healed. It was a typical macho male act in itself, but she also found it kind of sweet in a way. Kurenai could sense the bones in his jaw realigning into its proper shape. This wouldn't take much longer, she thought. Kakashi could feel the pain in his jaw lessen with each passing second. He looked at Kurenai and marveled at her abilities and once again began to lose himself in her beauty. Suddenly, her voice snaps him back into reality. There, that should take care of it, Kurenai says as she begins to rise. However, her legs begin to give way and she begins to fall. I guess I hadn't replenished enough chakra yet, she thought, as she was about to hit the floor. Suddenly, two arms shot forth and caught her with a strength that they shouldn't possess at the moment, lifting her up. I told you not to overexert yourself, Kakashi growled with annoyance and a small hint of concern for her. No need to be concerned for little old me, Kakashi, my condition isn't life-threatening. You can put me down anytime. Kurenai innocently said. Kakashi quickly set her down, turning his head away from her. Kurenai noticed this and began to wonder if Kakashi was blushing underneath his mask. She wanted to believe he was. Alright, my old rival, now that you can talk in a coherent voice again, would you mind telling all of us what's been going on? Guy bellowed in his usual high-volume voice. Yes, of course, everyone gather round, I'm only going to tell this once and no questions while I'm talking. I'll answer any questions afterwards if I can. Kakashi solemnly says. Meanwhile, across town, while Kakashi begins his tale, Sakura is in her room trying on different dresses, trying to decide which one Sasuke would like best. She had heard that Shikamaru and the others had returned from their mission to bring Sasuke back. She wanted to look her absolute best for Sasuke, since she was sure that Ino Pig was probably fawning all over him already. She had felt a strong chakra pressure earlier towards the hospital, and she was sure that had to be her beloved Sasuke. She finally decided upon a black flower-printed kimono dress, and combed her long pink hair out past her shoulders. She had spent months regrowing her hair since the Chunin exams and her battle with the Sound Ninja. She had heard once that Sasuke liked girls with long hair. She took a quick look at the clock and yelped. I can't believe I took this long to get ready, as she threw her shoes on and sprinted out the door heading towards the hospital. I found Naruto in the Valley of the End. Sasuke was nowhere to be found. I saw how grave Naruto's wound was and brought him back here. And that pretty much brings you all up to speed of what happened. Any questions? Kakashi asks. I have a question, Guy says. Of course you do. Kakashi groans and rolls his eyes. The Valley of the End is far from Konoha. Even with my miraculous speed it would take half a day for me to traverse back to here. How were you able to do it in less than an hour? Guy inquires. Kakashi took a deep breath and said, I received some additional chakra from the Kyuubi demon imprisoned within Naruto. That was the intense chakra pressure you all felt as I entered Konoha. Without it, I could not have made it back in time to save Naruto. If I even did, Kakashi repentantly says. The nine-tailed fox, Ino gasps. I thought the fourth Hokage killed that demon. Shikamaru says. No. A loud voice echoes in the room as a large white-haired man appears in a cloud of smoke astride a very large toad. Jiraiya, one of the legendary Sannin, had arrived. What do you mean no old man? Kiba says. Quiet you young whelp, you address the fabulous and most legendary Sannin and sensei of the fourth Hokage himself, Jiraiya the Toad Sage Master Extraordinaire. Oh give me a break, Shikamaru sarcastically says. Shut up Shikamaru. Asuma angrily says, glaring at his student. One look into his sensei's eyes made Shikamaru realize that this old man was exactly who he said he was. He immediately decided his best course of action was to keep quiet and listen for the time being. Ino on the other hand wasn't as smart and immediately shot her mouth off. Whatever, back to the original question, what do you mean the nine-tailed fox wasn't killed by fourth Hokage Yondaime? Jiraiya was a bit annoyed at the tone of her question but let it slide as she was a fairly pretty kunoichi and would probably fill out quite nicely as she got a little bit older. He was about to explain when Kakashi interrupted him. Master Jiraiya, is this the time which should reveal this? Yes Kakashi, this secret needs to be revealed if for nothing else to relieve some of the pain and heartache Naruto has been put through. It was bad decision on the third Hokage's part to try and keep this buried. I agree, Kakashi says. Now as for the rest you be quiet and listen and I'll explain. Jiraiya speaks. As powerful as the fourth Hokage was, and I should know I trained him. Even he was not able to destroy the Kyuubi demon that attacked the Leaf Village 14 years ago. However, he knew of one jutsu that could contain or trap the demon but at a severe cost. This forbidden jutsu is known as the demonic soul seal jutsu. At the cost of his own life Yondaime was forced to sacrifice himself using the demonic soul seal technique, and he then sealed the Kyuubi's soul into Naruto. A silence hung over the room as everyone who didn't know about this attempted to come to grips with what had just been said. Finally a voice spoke up and asked the question everyone wanted to. But why Naruto? Rock Lee asked. Jiraiya walked over to Rock Lee and put his hand on his shoulder and said. Because Lee, Yondaime was a noble man and he wouldn't imprison the demon in another family's child. He chose to seal Kyuubi away into his one and only child. An audible gasp was echoed by the majority of people in the room. Yes it's true, Naruto is Yondaime the fourth Hokage's only son. In a way, this village owes its past and current existence to both Yondaime and Naruto, Jiraiya says proudly. As Jiraiya left the waiting room to help Tsunade with Naruto's operation, he left behind a very stunned group of people. They were all silent as each one attempted to come to terms with what the Toad Sage had just told them. The Junin present had known what the true demise of the Kyuubi demon had been, but not of Naruto's true heritage, all save one Kakashi. He had suspected being a student of the fourth Hokage, which made him wonder even more why he didn't foster a better relationship with Naruto. Silently, he cursed himself again for his failings and vowed to rectify his mistakes with Naruto if given another chance. The Chunin in the room had never known about the imprisonment of the nine-tailed fox into their friend. They had always been told that the fourth Hokage had sacrificed his own life to destroy Kyuubi. Even more shocking to them was to learn that Naruto was a direct descendant of the Leaf Village's greatest hero. They had been told their whole life by their parents to avoid and stay away from Naruto, but never given a valid reason as to why. But, honoring one's parents is a long-standing shinobi tradition and they followed their parents' wishes. Now many of them were regretting this action and how they themselves had treated Naruto in the past. Finally, Rock Lee broke the silence and asked his sensei. Guy sensei, why would our parents not tell us any of this and why were they so adamant that we should stay away from Naruto? It isn't right. You're right, Lee, it isn't right, but your parents, in fact everyone, was bound by the third Hokage's decree not to divulge any of what you have just heard to the next generation. This decree was punishable by death to those who broke this law. As for your parents telling you to stay away from Naruto, you must understand. The Kyuubi demon killed many people in the Leaf Village before it was stopped by Yondaime, and many people stupidly saw Naruto as the Kyuubi and not for what he really is, the cage that keeps the demon at bay. So, instead of honoring Naruto, as people should have, they shunned him and made him an outcast. In my opinion, Lee, it has been the great shame of this village for the past 14 years. Shikamaru, unable to contain his anger any longer, shouts. Why would the third Hokage create such a stupid law? Didn't he know the hell Naruto went through growing up? I remember as a kid, I was with my mother in the market and a mob had formed and they were throwing stones at this little blonde-haired boy trying to drive him away. I remember I asked my mother why were people throwing rocks at this kid. She just said that he deserved it, and then I watched her pick up a stone and throw it at him. She then told me to throw a rock as well and I did. Will somebody please explain to me why he deserved that and all the other crap he went through his whole life? Please, will somebody tell me why? The despair in his voice cutting through the room like a knife, as he dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his face. Asuma walked over to where his student was and lifted him back to his feet. He didn't know what to say to alleviate the pain Shikamaru was feeling, but he knew he had to say something. Shikamaru, he didn't deserve any of that. The third Hokage thought his decree would protect Naruto, not harm him. Instead, people looked upon the law as Sarutobi trying to appease the Kyuubi and not kill it as they felt he should. They failed to realize that the demon couldn't be killed, only contained. It was a bad decision the third Hokage made, but he tried his best. If it's any consolation, Lord Sarutobi carried through his sentence on many a person who attacked or hurt Naruto in any way. But don't you see, sensei, if all people had known the truth, then that decree would not have been necessary. Shikamaru mournfully says as he wipes his tears away. Asuma merely looked down and said, it was a mistake, Shikamaru, one that the third Hokage regretted to his dying day. You have to remember, Hokages are human beings as well. They are not all knowing, no matter how much we may wish that they were. To be the next Hokage, that's Naruto's dream, isn't it? Neji Hyuga spoke, startling everyone in the room to see he had been standing in the doorway of the next operating room listening to everything. Yes, Neji, it is, Kakashi says. Now I know where Naruto gets his incredible strength from, and no, I'm not talking about the Kyuubi. To grow up going through what he had to and not hate the world is a strength and a resolve I could never attain. I thought I had it bad growing up, but it's nothing compared to him. I truly feel like an idiot with the crap I said to him during our match in the Chunin finals. If he lives, I hope he can forgive my stupidity and I would be honored to fight along his side in the future. Neji says with determination in his voice. As will I, Rock Lee shouts. As will we all, Shino says as well. Guy, Asuma, and Kurnai all look at one another and all of them realize what a special group of students they have been blessed with. Their pride in them never stronger than it was at that moment. They look over to Kakashi, who also has been absorbing what's been said, and he is proud of them and of his fellow Junin as well. But he is more ashamed of himself and his failure to instill this sense of honor into his own students. One is a traitor, and one is a lovesick kunoichi fool pining away for that scum. Only Naruto has this sense of honor, and Kakashi had been a blind fool not to see it sooner. Just as he comes to this realization, Sakura comes bursting in and says, "Where's Sasuke?" As Sakura reached the waiting room, she could barely contain her excitement at seeing Sasuke again. As she entered the room, and asked about Sasuke, she saw all of her friends there and thought they must be here to welcome Sasuke back as well. And why not? He's such a great guy, it's no wonder he has so many friends not like that nuisance Naruto. As she scanned the room looking for Sasuke, she failed to notice the glares many of the people were giving to her. Not seeing Sasuke anywhere, she asks the closest person to her in the room again, "Where is Sasuke?" Shikamaru, being that said person in the room, says, "Don't know, don't really care, he can rot in hell as far as I'm concerned." This immediately brought Sakura's famous temper to a boil. Nobody talks about Sasuke-kun like that with her around, and she shouts at Shikamaru. "You take that back, you lazy good-for-nothing jerk. Hey Ino, are you just going to sit there and let your doby of a teammate talk about Sasuke-kun like that?" Ino lifted her head and looked directly at Sakura and said, "Sit down and shut up, Sakura. No one here is in any mood to listen to your bullshit right now." It was then that Sakura looked around the room and noticed the glares being sent her way by everyone in the room. Confused as to what was going on, she turned to Kakashi-sensei, who was also leveling a cold stare her direction, and stammers, What's going on?" Just then, a medic nin pushing a gurney with Hinata on it came through the doorway of the operating room. Shizune pushing another gurney with Tsunade on it followed this. "Hinata!" Kurenai shouts as she rushes over to check on her student's condition. "Don't worry about Hinata, she's fine. She gave everything she had during the operation and she's completely spent right now, but she will recover." "You were right, Kurenai, she has incredible chakra strength and control for one so young," Tsunade says in a weak voice. "I'm sorry, we've got to get these two to the recovery room right now, the operation was more dire than we expected," Shizune states, and they immediately wheel the two away. "Operation, is Sasuke-kun okay?" Sakura asks in a panicked voice. The doors swing open once more with Jiraiya pushing a gurney containing Naruto. He looks around and chuckles, "Hey kid, there's some people here who want to say hi to you, don't pass out just yet." Naruto with great effort lifts his head and says, "Hey guys, what's up?" Everyone in the room, except Kakashi and Sakura, make their way over to the gurney to check on Naruto. Kakashi not moving out of a sense of guilt, Sakura not moving because no one has told her anything about Sasuke yet. "Hey knucklehead, you look pretty damn comfortable there. How long are you going laid up and missing all that fun shinobi training?" Shikamaru says in a laughing sarcastic way. "I don't know, Shikamaru, they say at least 3 weeks, but I hope it's sooner than that. I'll go crazy not being able to train that long," Naruto in a weakened voice says. "Oh man Naruto," Shikamaru says, slapping his hand to his forehead. 3 weeks of bed rest with no training, man, I have fantasies about such things and here you are complaining about it," as the entire group laughs. "Yes Naruto, get well quickly. Lady Tsunade thinks she might be able to mend my arm and leg, and when she does, I want to spar with you as soon as possible to test my skills against some of your new jutsus." Lee interjects. "As do I Naruto, you are a worthy opponent," Neji says as he extends his hand to Naruto. A somewhat surprised Naruto takes Neji's hand and shakes it, though it took all the strength he could muster to do it, and says, "Sure thing Neji, no problem, and you too Lee." "Excellent," Lee exclaims. "Hey pervy sage, where's Kakashi-sensei?" Naruto says as he scans the people around him. Kakashi, upon hearing his name, immediately moves over to the gurney and looks down on Naruto and says in a soft voice, "Hey kid, how are you doing?" "I'm okay sensei, I understand I have you to thank for saving my life." "I'm sorry I let you down," Naruto says in a mournful voice. In a voice crackling with several emotions, Kakashi says, "Naruto, you didn't let me down, just the opposite, I feel I've let you down. I've never been more proud of you than I am right now. You just get some rest and heal, and then I'll give you some training like you wouldn't believe." That sounds great, Kakashi-sensei. Is Sakura here, sensei? Naruto anxiously asks. She's here, Naruto, Kakashi says as he turns to her to call her over. Sakura walks over to the gurney, still confused as to what is going on. She looks over to Naruto and says, "Hi, Naruto." "Hey, Sakura, how are you?" Naruto asks in a strained voice. "I don't know how I am, Naruto. Nobody here will tell me anything." "Where is Sasuke-kun, Naruto?" Naruto, once again crushed that the first thing Sakura says is about Sasuke, looks down timidly and says, "I'm sorry, Sakura. Or should I say I couldn't bring Sasuke back. I'm sorry, I couldn't keep my promise to you, he's gone." Sakura just stood there staring at Naruto, her body slightly quivering, before she finally spoke. "Naruto, you idiot. I ask you to do one thing in my life and you can't even do that, right? Gah, I don't know what I was thinking, believing you could actually accomplish something. I mean, Sasuke always called you a loser, but I never really believed that until." "That's enough," Jiraiya yelled. "This loser little girl has already passed out, so thankfully he can't hear any more of this garbage you're spewing out of your mouth. Please handle this, Kakashi, as I may go too far if I deal with it." And with that, Jiraiya wheeled the gurney out of the room towards the recovery wing. "What does he mean, handle it, Kakashi-sensei?" Sakura asks before a hand strikes her across the face, knocking her down. Sakura looks up to see her sensei standing over her, his body shaking with rage. The rest of the people in the room took a step back, wondering where this was going to go. They were already stunned by Sakura's vile treatment of Naruto. Kakashi's reaction was also stunning, if not deserved in and of itself. As Sakura struggled to get to her feet, she heard Kakashi say in a vengeful voice, "If you get up, Sakura, I will knock you down again. You will sit there and shut up and listen to what I have to say right now." Sakura looked down and quietly said, "Yes, sensei. I said shut up. I don't want to hear your voice again, do you understand?" Kakashi says with vengeance. Sakura, afraid to look up at her sensei, slowly nodded her head. "Now listen up and listen well, because I'm not going to repeat myself. In case you didn't notice, Naruto was nearly killed trying to keep his promise to you. And the individual who nearly succeeded in killing him was your precious Sasuke-kun." Kakashi angrily informs her. Sakura's eyes grew wide upon hearing this, and she lifted her head to Kakashi and was about to say something when the look in her sensei's eye told her this would be a mistake. Furthermore, Sasuke and his new friends also nearly killed Neji and Choji, as well as severely injuring Shikamaru and Kiba. Sasuke has chosen to betray everything and everyone in the Leaf Village in his insatiable quest for power. So the sooner you realize this in that bubblehead you call a brain, the sooner people will quit looking upon you as a lovesick idiot to this village's greatest traitor since Orochimaru. Whom, by the way, Sasuke has now allied himself with. It's time for you to grow up, Sakura. Perhaps there is still hope for you to become a decent, respectable shinobi, I don't know. But after witnessing what you said to Naruto, who has done everything he can to be your friend, to no avail, I might add. I can't stand to look at you anymore. You are now nothing more to me than a reminder of what a failure I have been as a sensei, not only to Naruto, but also to you and Sasuke as well, judging by both of your recent actions. As my last official act as sensei of team number 7, I hereby dissolve this team and resign as its sensei, effective immediately," Kakashi announces as he turns to leave the room. Sakura and everyone else in the room are shaken beyond words at Kakashi's final statement. As Kakashi begins to walk away, he stops and says, "I apologize to all of you who have just witnessed what has just transpired, both in my words and actions. But it needed to be done. My failure as a sensei to my 3 students is absolute in this matter, and I can offer no defense for that. Sakura, if you are wise, you will see if any of these other Junin would be willing to carry on your training as a shinobi. Looking upon their students, you could find no better, no matter which one trained you. They are by far more qualified than I to be a sensei to anyone. Goodbye, Sakura. I hope you've heard what I've said and I wish you well," as he turns once again to leave. Sakura, with tears streaming down her face, calls out, "Wait, Kakashi-sensei. Without turning to look back, Kakashi dejectedly says. Haven't you heard anything I've said, Sakura? I'm no longer yours or anyone's sensei. And with that, Hitaki Kakashi, the copy ninja, one of the Leaf Village's greatest and strongest Junin, walks out of the room and into the unknown. It has been several hours since Kakashi dissolved Team Number 7 and left the hospital. Upon leaving, he realized that he had absolutely no idea what he was going to do next. He hadn't really thought things out when he decided to end his days as a sensei to his 3 students. It was a spur-of-the-moment action precipitated by what he had witnessed and heard watching the other people who were with him at the hospital. Under normal circumstances, Kakashi would usually consult with the Hokage for counsel, but rubbing his recently mended jaw, he knew right now a conversation with Lady Tsunade was impossible until she cooled down. Kakashi didn't regret what he had done, but the realization that he had no plan for afterwards annoyed him greatly. Another brilliant move on my part, Kakashi grumbled as he walked down the street, oblivious to everyone except his own thoughts. After walking the streets of Konoha seemingly forever, Kakashi found himself in the seedier part of the village, standing outside of a very shady and ominous sake bar. Well, I could use a drink or several at the moment, and for the mood I'm in, this place is perfect to handle that chore. Kakashi mused as he entered the establishment. Late into the night, 1 drink became 2, then 2 drinks became 4, and so on into the late evening. Soon it became pointless to measure Kakashi's sake consumption by the glass. You were better off counting the empty bottles, which were numerous by then. As Kakashi blurry vision scanned his surroundings, he observed what dive this place was, which probably explained its lack of customers. The bar was dark and dank, and being fairly empty matched Kakashi's current state of mind exactly. The sake was of questionable quality as well as potency, but if you drank enough of it, it got the job done, so one could overlook its shortcomings. Kakashi chuckled to himself when he thought of this. As far as he was concerned, when it came to the Junin of the Leaf Village, he was this sake he was drinking. He was quite amused with his analogy of the two, when the doors of the bar flew open and 4 already inebriated Chunin stumbled in. Kakashi didn't recognize any of them, which didn't surprise him. One quick look at these 4 and even a novice would recognize their utter lack of talent for being quality shinobi. He surmised that they were probably some of the weaker genin the Leaf Village had quickly promoted after the Kyuubi demon had decimated so many of the Chunin and Junin 14 years ago. The 3rd Hokage had needed to replenish the village's ranks quickly before a rival nation might attack in their weakened state. So, at that time, the restrictions for attending and graduating the Shinobi Academy had temporarily been reduced until they had recovered their strength and numbers. Another decision he thought the 3rd Hokage probably regretted, but Sarutobi had little choice at the time. The door swung open once more and the obvious leader of this motley group of Chunin swaggered in. However, Kakashi did recognize this one and he hoped he would go unnoticed by him. Not out of fear, but Kakashi wanted to avoid any potential confrontation. For you see, the drunken Chunin who had just entered to join his friends was none other than Taro Haruno, Sakura's father. Unfortunately, fate would not be kind to Kakashi tonight, as Taro did spot him in the corner and grabbed a bottle of this bar's poor sake and sauntered over to him. As Taro approached, Kakashi thought, "This is going to end badly, no doubt about it." "Kawashi," Taro said in a slurred voice. "Taro," Kakashi said in a monotone voice. "'Tis as a surprise, I never seen you here before," Taro said as he slammed the bottle of sake onto the table and clumsily grabbed a chair to sit down, not waiting for an invitation. "No, Taro, this is my first time in here. Are you a regular at this place?" Kakashi asked. "You know it, it's one of the few places that nagging bitch I have for a wife won't track me down at." Taro spat, as he lifted the bottle to his mouth to greedily drink, not bothering with a cup, and spilling a great deal down his chin as he drank. "Of course, of all the places to choose from, I chose to come in here. I just keep making great decisions," Kakashi sarcastically thought as he watched Taro finish the bottle and yell and the innkeeper for another. He failed to notice the cloaked figure outside staring at them through a small window in the door. The innkeeper quickly brought over another bottle as he had all night. He had never seen a Junin in his establishment before, and certainly not one of Kakashi's reputation. He certainly didn't want to get on the bad side of any Junin, let alone one of Kakashi's stature. As Taro popped open the bottle and was about to drink, he paused and extended the bottle to Kakashi. Kakashi realized that Taro must not have known what had transpired earlier today. Maybe he could get through this without any trouble. Kakashi merely held his cup up still filled with sake and politely declined. Even bad sake should be drank properly, and not straight from the bottle like a common rogue. Taro merely shrugged his shoulders and began drinking again straight from the bottle as before. He put the bottle down and lisping badly jokingly said to Kakashi. "Looks like you've been hitting it pretty good tonight, Kawashi. Hope it doesn't interfere with you training of my beautiful girl Sakura or of Sasaki. She really likes him, and boy it wow'd be great if those two got married. I wow'd love to get my clan connected with dears. Anything you can do to help out with dat, I wow'd appreciate Kawashi. I mean Sakura and Sasaki such G-Wood kids, not like that little monster on their team." That was the wrong thing to say to Kakashi. In a stern voice now filling with a rising anger, Kakashi asked Taro. "To whom do you refer, Taro? Yub no Kawashi, that Naruto kid. I will tell Yub something, Kawashi. Yub should do da village a favor and take dat kid out. Yub no, make it look like an accident during training. Dat little shit deserves don't he?" As Taro began to laugh and drink from the bottle again. Kakashi drunkenly knew right then that Taro was about to have a really bad night. He slowly rose from the table and leaned down to Taro and whispered. "First off, Taro, you need not worry about my drinking interfering with Sakura or Sasuke's training. You see, Sasuke betrayed the Leaf Village and is now with Orochimaru, so I wouldn't plan a wedding anytime soon. Secondly, your daughter is just like her mother, a pampered snotty little bitch, whom I refuse to train anymore, so I resigned today as her sensei. And thirdly, Taro, and this is most important for you to remember. If I ever hear you speak about Naruto like that again or you attempt to harm him in any way in the future, I'll kill you." And with that, Kakashi, using some taijutsu he had learned long ago from Guy, backhanded Taro across the face, sending him crashing into the far wall. The other four Chunin saw what had happened and ran over to check on Taro, who was quite unconscious and bleeding from his mouth. They angrily turned towards Kakashi, and the largest one in the front slurring said, "You gonna pay for dat, Mr. High and Mighty Ninja." The innkeeper behind the bar pleaded with the Chunin not to fight inside his place, but was immediately struck by one of them and told to shut up if he knew what was good for him. Then all four charged at Kakashi with bloodlust in their eyes, kunais in their hands. The fight, if one wants to call it that, lasted about 30 seconds. In that brief amount of time, a drunken Kakashi, letting his rage take over, had left all four on the floor yelling in agony as each one clutched a various body part in obvious pain. Kakashi hadn't even bothered to use his Sharingan, as these opponents were beneath him in every way. Simply using the speed and taijutsu he had learned from Guy, he crippled each one in a different way, ensuring that they would never again be Chunin shinobi for the Leaf Village. A sober Kakashi would have taken half that time to complete the fight and left them reasonably intact. However, these four fools had chosen to fight a drunk Kakashi. And with Kakashi in this state, the quality of mercy had left his being the moment Taro said what he did about Naruto. Kakashi then quietly walked over to the bar where the innkeeper was shaking in fear as he approached. When Kakashi got there, he pulled out his wallet and said, "I'm sorry about the damages, good keeper. This should cover it, and if it doesn't, I'm sure my friends over there will make up the difference." Kakashi then turned and stumbled out of the bar and into the cool Konoha night. However, because of Kakashi's inebriated state, he failed to sense a figure hiding in the shadows outside the bar, waiting for him to exit. He did notice that something was amiss when he felt a sharp pain in his neck, and he reached up to pull out a dart. He stared at the dart for a moment until he was overwhelmed by a sense of grogginess and fell to his knees, no longer having the strength to support his weight. He looked up to see the figure step out of the shadows and walk towards him. He recognized this Chunin and realized that whatever drug she had injected into him had left him in a bad state to defend himself. This was trouble and Kakashi knew it, because the Chunin advancing towards him with a murderous look in her eyes was Ishi Haruno, Sakura's mother. This is very bad, Kakashi thought as Ishi Haruno moved steadily closer to him. He struggled with all his might to lift his arms into a defensive stance, but to no avail. They merely hung at his side, useless to him. Whatever drug or poison she had injected him with was doing a fine job of incapacitating completely. As if reading his mind, Ishi finally spoke in a voice filled with hatred and bile. You needn't worry, you bastard. It wasn't poison that I gave to you, though I was sorely tempted after what you did to my daughter today. But you've already seen what a pathetic wretch her father is, so I can't kill you much as I would like, and have the Anbu Black Squadron hunt me down to the ends of the earth. I can't afford to die and leave my Sakura to be raised by that idiot, but that doesn't mean I still can't punish you for what you've done, Kakashi. I've done nothing to your daughter other than resign as her sensei, Kakashi said defiantly. Liar. Ishi screamed as she stuck Kakashi across the face with the blunt end of a kunai she was holding, tearing his mask and causing a cut and some blood to form in Kakashi's mouth. Flashback earlier that day. Sakura was an emotional wreck as she watched her former sensei walk out the hospital doors. She didn't know what to do or think. Her Sasuke-kun, a traitor, Naruto almost killed by him. And now her sensei, so disgusted with her he quit as her teacher. Sakura looked up with tears in her eyes searching for answers from her friends in the room. In return all she received were icy visions of anger or pity directed her way. Slowly, the people in the room began to leave through various exits. As Ino walked by, Sakura called out to her. Ino paused, and then turned around to glare at her and sarcastically said. Go home, Sakura, you're of no use to anyone right now. Oh yeah, by the way, Sakura, you win. Sasuke is all yours now. I wouldn't go out with that murderous scum if you paid me. But looking at you now, I can see you two are the perfect couple. Ino then turned back and left the room with Sakura crying still on the floor. Slowly, Sakura picked herself up off the floor and looked around the empty room. She realized that Ino was right in a sense. Nobody wanted her around and she was of no use at the moment. All she could do was go home, and she did as fast as she could with tears streaming down her face the entire way. Upon reaching her house, she collapsed in a heap, the weight of the day's events crushing her spirit. When Ishi Haruno returned later that day, she found her daughter in a dark corner of their home quietly weeping. After much effort to find out what had happened to her precious little princess to bring her to such a state. Eventually, Sakura broke down and told her mother what had transpired earlier that day. Return to present. How does it feel, you son of a bitch? Ishi sneered, looking down upon Kakashi and seeing the blood begin to trickle from his mouth. Well, it's not nearly as painful as having to listen to that screeching voice of yours, you bitch, Kakashi calmly stated as he looked up and spit some blood into Ishi's face. Ishi stepped back aghast at what just happened. She furiously wiped the blood from her face and then kicked Kakashi in his ribs in retaliation. She was about to strike him again when she heard a noise up the street that startled her. She realized that she couldn't continue to beat on Kakashi out in the open without some onlooker witnessing it. Fortunately, she had just the plan to hide what was going on from everybody. Stepping back from Kakashi, she began a series of hand movements to activate a genjutsu, as was her specialty. Before completing the activation, she viciously cursed at Kakashi. I think we need a little more privacy, you piece of shit. This genjutsu will use up all of my chakra, but I'm not done with you yet. I'll make you pay for slapping my baby and dismissing her team as her teacher. Why, Kakashi? All for that demon brat Naruto, who should have been put down the day he was born. He's nothing compared to my angel. Before I'm through, you Kakashi, I'll make you wish you were dead. And with that she finished the final hand sign and said, Gokuangyu no Jutsu, bringer of darkness technique. After that, Kakashi and Ichi were enveloped by an illusion of darkness within a 5-meter radius around them. Kakashi couldn't see, but he heard Ishii collapse on the ground. Kakashi couldn't help but be impressed with this genjutsu. It had the ability to create total darkness. Only the user is able to see through the darkness, making it the perfect illusion and time to attack. This was a high-level technique, developed by the first two Hokages, though theirs were much larger in scope. For Ishii to pull this off, Kakashi was beginning to understand where Sakura got her strength and control of genjutsu from. If Kakashi could just get his arms to work, he could use his Sharingan to combat this. However, though some feeling was beginning to return to his extremities, he still couldn't lift his arms to lift his height up and expose the Sharingan eye. Frustrated, he heard Ishii begin to stir and pick herself up off the ground. She must have passed out for a short time. She wasn't lying, she probably did exhaust every bit of chakra she had for this technique. Kakashi resigned himself to the fact that while he didn't have to worry about any more genjutsu or ninjutsu attacks from her, he was probably going to be on the receiving end of a nasty taijutsu beating, and there was nothing he could do about it. Ishii slowly got to her feet. She had done it. She had actually pulled this genjutsu off, she thought to herself. She knew she could only maintain this for a few minutes, but that would be enough time to give Kakashi a world of pain. She laughingly said to Kakashi through the darkness. "Are you ready, Kakashi? Because I am, and I'm going to enjoy this." As Ishii moved in, Kakashi braced himself for what was to come when a voice rang out, surprising both of them. Jubaku Satsu Jutsu, Tree Binding Technique. Ishii suddenly found herself unable to move and looked down to see a tree growing beneath her feet, with its roots and branches binding her to it. The voice rang out a second time and said, "Kai no Jutsu, Dispel or Release Technique." And with that the darkness jutsu began to dissipate and Kakashi found himself staring at Ishii lifted off the ground and bound to a tree. Ishii was trying to scream, but a branch was covering her mouth, preventing this. In front of Ishii stood the genjutsu mistress of the Leaf Village, Uehi Kurenai, and she didn't look happy. Ishii recognized the genjutsu mistress and her eyes grew wide with shock and fear. The cold-hearted stare Kurenai was directing towards her sent a chill throughout her body. Even if I had all my chakra and was at full strength, I wouldn't stand a chance against her, Ishii thought to herself and began to weep in defeat. Kurenai for her part continued to stare at her defeated opponent. Under normal circumstances, when she used the Jubaku Satsu technique on an enemy, Kurenai would appear from inside the tree and stab her target with a kunai. However, upon looking at Ishii weeping like a little child, Kurenai took a small amount of pity on her. She would live, but Kurenai decided that she needed to be punished for her transgressions. Beginning another series of hand signs and voice activation, Kurenai called out, "Narakumi no Jutsu, Hell Viewing Technique." Kakashi recognized the hand signs and shut his eyes tightly before the voice activation of this jutsu. This was a punishing genjutsu that he himself had learned from Yumino Iruka long ago. It caused the target to see a horrifying vision. In Ishii's case, she saw herself being led to the gallows and saw Taro in the crowd smiling with a bottle of sake in his hand, toasting his soon-to-be dead wife. She also saw her daughter Sakura dressed like a whore being led away by three disgusting old men. Ishii began to scream as the rope was placed around her neck and the trapdoor beneath her feet gave way, and then everything went black. As Kakashi slowly opened his eyes, he was greeted with the vision of Ishii lying unconscious, her body quivering in the street with Kurenai looking down upon her with contempt. Kurenai then turned around and walked over to Kakashi. When she got there, she looked at Kakashi on his knees with his arms hanging useless at his sides, looking utterly helpless, and couldn't help but let out a small laugh. "What's so funny?" Kakashi asked, obviously annoyed at this. "I'm sorry, Kakashi," Kurenai said with a giggle. "I just find it amusing that one of the elite Junin of the village was brought down so easily by a mere Chunin. Maybe you should ask Guy if he'd be willing to give you some extra training to brush up on your skills." As Kurenai said this, she began to laugh again at the whole situation. "Very funny, Kurenai," Kakashi said, the irritation in his voice quite pronounced, especially after Kurenai's last statement. "There were other factors involved in my current situation. And besides, this hasn't been one of my better days." Kakashi said, trying to muster up any kind of defense for his predicament. I'm sure there were, and no it hasn't, Kurenai said, still slightly giggling as she knelt down to check on Kakashi's condition. Just then 3 Anbu Black Ops arrived at the scene. The lead captain began to speak and said, Hitaki Kakashi, sir, Lady Tsunade has requested your presence in her office tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., will you comply? Yes, Captain, inform the Hokage I will be there, Kakashi said wearily. Thank you, sir, if I may ask what is going on here? The captain said as he looked at the quivering body of Ishii Haruno. A private matter, gentleman, that has already been dealt with, Kakashi said with authority. Very good, sir. We were fortunate to run into you. We had been sent to check on a report of 5 Chunin causing problems here in the lower district, the captain said. Yes, Captain. Very fortunate indeed. The 5 Chunin of whom you speak are inside that bar across the street. They too have been dealt with, but you may take them away anytime you wish. They're not going anywhere for a while, Kakashi said bluntly. Yes, sir. We will take care of the matter from here. Is there anything else we may do to you? The captain politely asks. No, Captain. Thank you for your assistance. I have everything else handled. Kurenai stated. As you wish. The captain said, bowing before the 2 Junin before he and his squad leapt across the street to go inside the sake bar. You have everything else handled? Kakashi asks, as he an eyebrow while he says it. Kurenai's reply was to smack the back of Kakashi's head and said. Shut up, Kakashi, unless you want the entire village to know you got your butt kicked by a Chunin no less. Point taken, Kakashi states as he struggles to get up onto his feet. Kurenai reaches down to help him up to a standing position and asks in a concerned voice. Can you move, Kakashi? Not very well. The drug Ishii hit me with is starting to lose its effect. But it will still be a little while before I can move freely on my own. Plus all the sake I've had isn't helping matters either, Kakashi says dejectedly. Well, come on, lean on me. My apartment is a couple of miles from here. You can rest and regain your strength as well as sober up there, before your meeting with the Hokage tomorrow. Kurenai says with determination in her voice. I don't know, Kurenai, what will your neighbors say or think bringing me to your home at such a late hour? Kakashi asks. My neighbors and I are private people who mind their own business. You need not worry about my reputation, Kakashi, Kurenai replies. You misunderstand, Kurenai. It's not your reputation that I'm worried about but mine, Kakashi playfully says. Kurenai's response for the second time tonight was to give Kakashi a resounding slap to the back of his head again and says. Another remark like that, and whatever Ishii had planned to do to you is nothing compared to what I'll do, you got that? Yes, ma'am, Kakashi says as contritely as he can, as they begin to slowly walk to Kurenai's place. A little less than an hour later, Kurenai arrived at her apartment with Kakashi in tow leaning on her for support. As she opened the door and brought Kakashi in, he surveyed the decor of Kurenai's home. Kurenai was a very private person and Kakashi realized that he was probably one of the few people in the entire village to ever see the inside of her apartment. Kakashi was pleasantly surprised by what he saw. It was simple yet elegant and it blended together to create a very peaceful atmosphere. The living room to the right consisted of a simple futon with 2 ornately carved wooden trunks on the sides, which functioned capably as tables as well as storage pieces. A floral decorated oriental rug with gold accents covered the majority of the floor. In one corner of the room was a simple side table with a mosaic serving tray, upon which sat a beautiful porcelain tea set and a bottle of shochu along with some drinking glasses. In another corner was a small yet functional fireplace, with a simple but comfortable-looking floor mat and pillows in front of it. A small wooden bookcase containing several books sat next to the fireplace. Kakashi took a quick look, but didn't see any books with the colorful binding indicative of his favorite read the Ika Ika Paradise series. Too bad, Kakashi thought to himself. I can't discuss novels with her, I guess. The centerpiece of the entire room had to be the wood-framed glass doors with bamboo curtains pulled to the side, leading to a balcony which had a magnificent view of Konoha and especially of Hokage Mountain. To the left of the apartment was a traditional kitchen with a small clay komoda stove above which hung some pots and pans. A single setting table and chair was next to this. The cabinets, counter, and food storage bins finished off the small area. In between the two rooms was a hallway, which Kakashi surmised led to the bathroom and bedroom area of Kurenai's place. Kakashi was still viewing his surroundings when Kurenai's voice interrupted his thoughts. "All right, Kakashi, let's get you fixed up," as she began to lead him down the hallway. Upon entering the bedroom, Kakashi suddenly started to feel nervous. He didn't know why. It was a standard-looking bedroom. The bed was of simple design consisting of a wood frame with flared legs and a bamboo canopy. On top of the frame was a mattress and pillows. To the side was a small table with a carefully pruned bonsai on it. A handmade piece of Japanese calligraphy hung on the wall. In the corner next to the bathroom door was a shoji screen upon which hung a very alluring kimono. Kakashi's heart started beating a little faster when he saw this and his imagination started taking over. Kurenai's next words didn't help with relieving Kakashi's anxiety at that moment. "Get on the bed, Kakashi," as she turned to go into the bathroom. Kakashi inwardly groaned when he heard those words, as made his way over to sit on the bed. He didn't know if it was the previous day's events or the sake or even the drug Ishii had given him, but he wasn't feeling any better. In fact, he was actually starting to feel worse, as the blood in his body was beginning to rush to places where he didn't want it to go. And as unintentional as it was, Kurenai was not helping matters at the moment. "I think I'm dying," Kakashi grumbled as he was trying his best to ignore the pain and pressure building below his waist. "What did you say?" Kurenai asked, as she re-entered the room and sat down next to Kakashi holding a tray of bandages and medicine. "I said, I think I'm dying," Kakashi nervously repeated. "You're not dying, Kakashi, you're just in some pain, I'll help you with that right now," Kurenai said in a concerned voice, as she turned around to place the tray next to her. "God, I think I am going to die," Kakashi silently mused as he began to stare at the long slender legs of Kurenai leading up to one of the most voluptuous bodies and beautiful faces he's ever seen in his life. As Kurenai turned back, Kakashi quickly turned his head away hoping he hadn't been caught and quickly said, "That's a very nice bonsai tree you have," as he began to silently curse at himself. "Damn it, Kakashi, get a grip. She's your friend and comrade, not some floozy for you to leer and ogle at like some pervert." Kakashi was beginning to wonder if all these years of reading Ika Ika Paradise was starting to turn him into some kind of fiend. If he made it out of this alive, he was going to have a long talk with Jiraiya in the near future. "Thank you, Kakashi, and thank you for noticing it," Kurenai said in a soft voice, smiling as she said it, looking at him. Inwardly, she had caught Kakashi and knew that he had been noticing something else. But for some reason it didn't bother her. Had it been anyone else looking at her like that, she'd have knocked them into next week, but not Kakashi. She actually felt pretty good knowing that she had this affect on him. However, as good as she felt, she was also feeling a bit nervous being this close to him. It didn't help her thought process either when she felt a rising warmth being generated between her legs. Kakashi's voice snapped her out of her thoughts. "Are you alright, Kurenai?" Kakashi asked, concerned about her. "I'm fine, Kakashi. Let's get you taken care of," Kurenai quickly said, her face turning slightly red as she began to fumble for the bandages and medicine and said, "First off, Kakashi, remove your shirt so I can take a look at those ribs Ishii kicked." Kakashi crossed his arms and began to pull the shirt over his head, revealing a very muscular chest and abdomen that nearly took Kurenai's breath away when she saw them. She quickly tried to focus her eyes on the black and blue bruise that had formed on the left side of his ribs. She quietly put some medicinal salve on her hands and said, "Nothing looks broken, Kakashi, that's good. Keep your left arm raised while I apply this. It's going to sting a little bit, but it will alleviate the pain until we can get a medic nin to check it tomorrow." Kurenai then began to rub the salve into the bruised area. She couldn't help but marvel at the feel of her hands on his well-toned body. The warmth that had been rising earlier was now becoming very distracting, as it seemed to be coursing throughout her entire body now while she applied this medicine. Kakashi was not faring any better. The soft and supple feel of Kurenai's hands on him was driving him to the depths of either unconsciousness or the death he had predicted earlier. He was thankful that he hadn't sustained any injuries below the waist. It would have been impossible to hide what he was feeling at that moment from her. If she had known what was going on down there, he probably would have ended up in the hospital infirmary for 6 months. God, this is worse than any torture Orochimaru could put me through, Kakashi thought. Kurenai finally stopped, when she realized that her hands had been roaming in an ever-widening circle from the bruised area where she was applying the salve and stammering said, "Oh, okay, I think that's taken care of it." It hasn't, Kakashi thought. But he knew she was talking about his ribs, and not what he was thinking about. Kurenai, feeling a bit disheveled, grabbed the bandages and wrapped them around Kakashi's torso. She did this quickly because any more contact of her hands to his body was going to drive her insane. After doing this, she grabbed the ointment to use on his face and tried to compose herself and said, "All right, Kakashi, take off your mask." Kurenai stopped and put her hand to her mouth, embarrassed. She knew Kakashi rarely took his mask off and never in front of people if it could be avoided. In fact, she didn't know anyone who had actually seen Kakashi's face without it. She quickly began to get up and stammered, "I'm sorry, Kakashi, I didn't mean to, I'll leave the room and." Kakashi deftly caught her hand mid-sentence as she was getting up and said, "It's all right, Kurenai, I don't mind you seeing my face. Please sit down, you did nothing wrong." As Kurenai began to slowly and nervously sit back down. Besides, Ishii already tore it with her kunai earlier this evening. Kakashi said, trying to reassure her that everything was okay. Kakashi raised his hands and began to remove the Leaf Village forehead protector and laid it down on the table next to him. Looking down, he then began to slowly peel away the torn mask from his face and placed it on the table as well. Once removed, his head began to rise and look directly at Kurenai. When Kurenai finally saw his face, she offered no outward reaction to it. However, her brain was doing cartwheels and screaming at her. "My God, this has got to be the most handsome man I have ever seen in my life. His face is gorgeous. Aside from the slight cut by his mouth and the vertical scar above and below his left eye, there isn't blemish anywhere. Even that scar doesn't detract from its beauty, if anything it enhances it and gives character and meaning to his face. Why in the world does he hide it from everyone?" Disappointed, Kakashi asks questioningly. "God no, Kakashi, you have a lovely face. Why do you hide it from the world?" Kurenai says with loving sincerity, as she applies a dab of ointment to his cut. Kakashi looks down for a moment, and softly says, "I have my reasons, but I am glad that you like it." Kurenai turns her head away, blushing badly to what he just said. She reaches for a vial of medicine and again tries to compose herself before turning back to him and says, "Here, Kakashi, drink this. It tastes awful, but it will help counteract any remnants of the drug Ishii used. It also has a strong sedative in it to help you sleep off your sake binge. By the way, what in the world were you thinking drinking that much sake?" "Well, I thought it would help me figure out what I'm going to do next, since I no longer have a team to train," Kakashi said wearily, as he then drank the medicine. "So, did you figure anything out?" Kurenai asks. "Yes, as soon as Naruto is healed, I'm going to help Master Jiraiya train him. At least that's what I want to do if Naruto will still have me," Kakashi says with concern. "Of course Naruto will want you, Kakashi, you're an excellent sensei," Kurenai says while she takes hold of his hand. Kakashi, while enjoying the feeling of Kurenai's hand in his, slowly pulls it away, drops his head down and mournfully says, "No, Kurenai, I'm not. The actions and results of my last team bear that fact out." Kurenai, wishing to change the subject divertingly, says, "So Kakashi, do you still think you're dying?" Kakashi lifts his head to look at the beautifully stunning face that asked that question and says a bit groggily, as the sedative was beginning to kick in, "I hope not. I owe it to Naruto. Besides, I guess I have a few dreams left that I would like to see if I could attain before I go. Kurenai turns not facing Kakashi and begins cleaning up the medical supplies. While doing this, she asks, "And what dreams would those be, Kakashi?" "Well, I can only think of one at the moment," Kakashi says as he leans towards her. Kurenai feels the mattress shift slightly, turns her head back asking, "And what dream would that be?" Kurenai's eyes suddenly grow wide as she unexpectedly finds her face a mere inch or two away from his. "This," Kakashi whispers as he gently cups her chin in his hand and softly places his lips upon hers in a deep soulful kiss. Kurenai's eyes grow even wider upon this action, but she doesn't pull away. In fact, after a few seconds, her eyes flutter a moment and then close as she instinctively brings her hand up to softly grip the back of Kakashi's head and return his kiss with a passion she didn't know she had. After a minute, Kakashi agonizingly pulls away, leaving Kurenai breathless, and whispers in her ear, "Thank you, Kurenai. If I do die tonight, I'll die a happy man." And with that said, Kakashi lies back on the bed, bringing his right forearm up to his forehead above his eyes, with a shocked Kurenai still sitting next to him, and trying to figure out what just happened and what it means. After a moment, she begins to say, "Kakashi, I think I low," until she hears a quiet snoring sound coming from the man beside her. She looks down at him somewhat irritated and thinks, "I can't believe it, he fell asleep, I'll kill him. But wait, I'm the one who gave him the sedative to sleep. But I didn't know he was going to. I mean, had I known I would have. What would I have? What was I about to say to him? I mean, what am I thinking? God, this all so crazy." Finally, Kurenai resigns herself to the fact that she has a lot of thinking to do now. She lifts Kakashi's legs onto the bed and covers him with a blanket. She sees him sleeping so peacefully and gives him one more longing look, before blowing out the candles in the room and leaving to go sleep in the living room. As she lays down on her futon, she begins to dwell upon what happened. After a while, she can come to only one conclusion and mutters to herself, "Damn you, Kakashi, now I need a drink," as she closes her eyes and drifts off to sleep. As the morning sun shines through the window onto Kakashi's face, he begins to stir and, groaning, slowly opens his eyes to face the day. Staring upwards, he realizes that this is an unfamiliar ceiling he's looking at. Confused, Kakashi sits up and begins to survey his surrounding and finds that it's not just the ceiling, but the entire room is also a mystery to him. "Where the hell am I?" Kakashi says to himself. He swings his legs over the side and begins to rise out of the bed, rubbing his forehead, as he attempts to remember how he ended up here. As Kakashi begins to move about, he slowly begins to piece together the fragments of the previous day's events in his mind. However, the pounding headache he was currently enduring was not helping the process in any way. "Damn it, Kakashi, think," he silently mused as he walked over to a small table to retrieve his shirt, which was neatly cleaned and folded, to put it on. He then entered the adjacent bathroom to splash some cold water onto his face, and began to remember. "Alright, I remember disbanding Team Number 7 and leaving the hospital afterwards. I then walked around the village for a while until I stopped in at that sake bar. The sake bar, oh man, that explains why my head feels like a bowl of soggy ramen. I seem to remember something about a fight in the bar. Who did I fight? Oh yeah, it was Sakura's father Taro and his buddies. Okay, after that I left the bar, and something about another fight. What was it? That's right, it was with Ishii, Sakura's mother. She drugged me, and was kicking my pretty good, judging by my mouth and ribs." As he surveyed the damage of both injuries in the mirror. What happened after that? Kakashi said to himself as he racked his brain for the answer. The solution to where he was finally dawned on him, as he said to himself. I seem to remember something about Kurenai. Yes, that's it. This is Kurenai's apartment. She brought me here after she took down Ishii, to help me with my injuries. But where is she? Kakashi then exited the bathroom and ventured forth into the living room and kitchen area of Kurenai's home, looking for the owner. As he looked around, he realized that he was all alone in the apartment. He spied his mask, which had been expertly mended next to a bottle of sake with a note attached to it, sitting on a small table in the kitchen. Kakashi walked over to the table and unfolding the note began to read. Kakashi, I figured I'd better leave you a reminder of your meeting with Lady Tsunade in her office at 10 o'clock this morning. I've cleaned your shirt and mended your mask so that you can be halfway presentable to her. Take this bottle of sake as a gift to the Hokage. It's a very good vintage and hopefully it will help to smooth things over with her. I had an early morning training session with my team, so we'll have to talk later at some point. Good luck with your meeting and try to stay out of any more trouble if you can. Kurenai. Well, that explains the shirt and mask, and damn it, I had forgotten about that meeting. Kakashi thought to himself, as he looked to the clock to see what time it was. Shit, I only have 15 minutes to get to the Hokage's office. Kakashi exclaimed, as he grabbed the bottle and began to head towards the front door. I wonder what Kurenai meant about talking later. Kakashi thought, as he reached for the doorknob, when suddenly he froze as one more memory came crashing to him. The kiss. Oh my god, I kissed Kurenai last night. Why am I still alive? I don't know. Kakashi in a panic thought to himself, as he slowly exited the apartment. The shock of his last remembrance sapping what little energy he had to begin with. As he began his trek to the Hokage's office, all he could think about was one thing. What am I going to say to Kurenai? As Kakashi was heading out the door pondering his future conversation with Kurenai, a certain hyperactive knuckle-headed ninja was awakened by Konoha hospital nurse and told he had some visitors. Naruto slowly sat up in his bed, and shaking his head to drive away the remaining cobwebs he waited to greet his yet unknown guests. He hoped it was Kakashi-sensei and maybe Sakura, although he wasn't entirely sure about the latter. He was very surprised to see Shino Aburame and Kiba with Akamaru walk in. Hinata, holding some flowers and being slowly pushed into the room by her sensei Kurenai, followed them. Masking his slight disappointment, he flashed his trademark grinning smile, and cheerfully greeted his guests with his usual phrase upon meeting his friends. Hey guys, what's up? Hey yourself goofball, you look to be in good spirits. Kiba jovially says. Greetings Naruto, you do look much better than the last time I saw you. Shino says in his usual calm and monotone voice. Thanks guys, I do feel a lot better, hopefully they'll let me out of here soon, so I can get back to training, Naruto replies with glee in voice. Yeah, we just finished up with a training session, if you want to call it that. Kiba moaned. What do you mean Kiba? Naruto asks curiously. Well, me getting my butt kicked by Shino, while Hinata and Sensei watch isn't my idea of training, if you know what I mean. Man, I haven't been this sore since I fought you in the Chunin exams. Kiba complains while rubbing his shoulder. Upon hearing Hinata's name, Naruto looks past Kiba and spies Hinata still in the doorway in front of Kurenai holding flowers and says. Hey Hinata, I can barely see you all the way over there, can you come a little closer? A gentle push from Kurenai gets Hinata moving over towards the bed, as Kiba steps aside to allow his teammate to get by and next to Naruto. Hi Naruto, how are you feeling? Hinata stammers in a soft voice. I'm doing fine, you know me, you can't keep me down for very long. Naruto laughingly says, until a jolt of pain coming from his chest brought on by his laugh makes him wince slightly. Oh, Naruto, are you sure you're alright? Hinata asks, the concern evident in her tone. Well, I guess I still need to heal up a little bit more, but I'll be okay. Naruto says with a determined voice. A little bit more. Geez Naruto, that prick Sasuke puts a hole in your chest a day and a half ago and you say that. Man, you've got a lot of guts. Kiba says, as Akamaru barks in agreement. Naruto's face becomes very stoic for a moment. He's not ready to talk about Sasuke and what happened just yet, and quickly tries to change the subject. Turning to Hinata he asks. Are those for me Hinata? Hinata slightly blushes and realizes she's still holding the flowers she had gotten for Naruto in her hands and quietly says. Why, yes, Naruto, I hope you like them. She then gently lays the bouquet upon his lap. I do, Hinata. They smell real nice, and are pretty just like you, thank you. Naruto says as he closes his eyes and sniffs the bouquet. You're welcome. Hinata says, blushing even worse than before at Naruto's compliment. The kid's a charmer even if he doesn't know it. An amused Kurenai thinks in the back of the room watching the entire scene. I wonder if Kakashi taught him that. God, what am I thinking? Kurenai, get a hold of yourself, damn it. You've had Kakashi on the brain all morning. Kurenai silently berates to herself and shakes her head, trying to drive the thoughts away. Naruto's voice brings her back to reality. Hinata, I know this isn't much but please take this, as he takes a single flower from the bouquet and puts it in her hair, and places a friendly kiss upon her cheek, eliciting a small yelp from Hinata as he does this. I want to thank you for helping Lady Tsunade and Shizune save my life. I understand you might have gotten seriously hurt doing what you did. Don't scare me like that. I'm very happy to see that you're okay. But please don't ever do something like that again, not for me. You're way more valuable to the village than I am. Naruto says with sincerity and concern ringing throughout his statement, as he leans back into the bed. Oh my god, Hinata, you had better snatch this boy up quick, because in a couple of more years, every girl Konoha is going to be after this kid, if this is how he truly is. Kurenai silently thinks, as she looks upon her student who has gone rigid with shock. Just then, a nurse walks into the room, pushing a cart filled with bandages and medicine. She announces that it's time to redress Naruto's wounds, but if his visitors wish to, they may stay in the waiting area until completed and visit again afterwards. That's alright, we have to be going anyway, and we'll come back again another time. Kurenai says, as she signals Kiba and Shino to exit the room, helping Hinata along as they go. Nurse, might I have a few more minutes with the patient before you begin? There is something I need to talk to him about. Kurenai sternly states. Just a few minutes please, I'll go and check on some of my other patients. The nurse replies as she leaves the room. Naruto stares quizzically at Kurenai as she approaches his bed. Naruto, I just wanted to let you know that my team made a request to me and took a vote this morning and it was unanimous. As soon as you are healed and can begin to train again, I do hereby offer you a spot on team number 8, if you so desire with my blessing. Kurenai says with vigor. Needless to say, Naruto is a bit shocked at this offer. He thinks a moment before answering and says, I'm honored Lady Kurenai, but I don't think Kakashi-sensei would be too happy with me if I left him and my teammates on team number 7 to go join another team. Thanks for the offer, but I'll just stay with team number 7, if that's okay. Kurenai looked at Naruto confusingly, before realizing that he hadn't been told yet what had happened. Saddened by the fact that she was going to be the one to tell him, she thought a moment that maybe she should say nothing. Kurenai quickly rejected this. After everything he's been through, he deserved to know. Naruto, I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, but there is no more team number 7. Kurenai informs him as best she could. What do you mean? Naruto bolts up and asks in a panic-stricken voice. Naruto, with Sasuke's defection, Sakura's attitude, and your injuries, Kakashi felt it was in everyone's best interest to disband team number 7 and he resigned as sensei yesterday. Kurenai replies in a solemn voice, as she takes his hand to give him comfort. Naruto, stunned beyond belief at this news, silently stares out the window for a minute before asking in a choked voice. Will I ever see Kakashi-sensei again? Yes, Naruto, don't be sad, you will, I guarantee it. Kurenai says with confidence, as she remembers what Kakashi had told her the night before. Now lay back and get some rest, you've earned it. Kurenai says, as she lets go of his hand to brush some hair away from his eyes. Thank you Lady Kurenai, I'll try. Naruto says in a shaky voice, as she leaves the room. While Naruto was being given the news of his team's demise, Kakashi finally arrived at the Hokage's office, bottle in hand and with barely a minute to spare. Not that it mattered, As Shizune let Kakashi into the office, they both were greeted with the sound of snoring and Lady Tsunade face down upon her desk with an empty sake bottle still clutched in her hand. Not again, groaned Shizune, as she and Kakashi entered the office. As Kakashi takes a seat, he looks to Shizune and asks a simple question. Why don't you just wake her up? Shizune looks back annoyingly at Kakashi and says. Because Kakashi, the only thing more dangerous than pissing off Lady Tsunade when she is sober, is trying to wake her up when she is drunk. She tends to have a little kill the messenger complex when she's like this. Besides, you're a big tough Junin, why don't you wake her up? Kakashi looks at the sleeping Hokage for a moment, but then remembering his last encounter with Lady Tsunade as he absently rubs his jaw, turns back to Shizune and says. No thank you, I'm in no condition myself for a S-ranked mission right now. Besides, you're her friend and assistant, aren't you paid to handle these types of things? There isn't enough money in the village to get me to, Shizune began to say before she was interrupted by a puff of smoke in the office and a loud voice saying. All right, you brave shinobi of the village, I guess it takes one legendary Sannin to wake up another one. Shizune, take this balloon and fill it with water and bring it back to me. Jiraiya says with a snicker in his voice. Shizune quickly followed his orders, not entirely sure what he had planned, but she knew one thing for certain. Better him than me, she giggled to herself, as she filled the balloon with water and returned to the office. As she gave the water-filled balloon to Jiraiya, he told Kakashi and Shizune to step back to the far wall. Both Kakashi and Shizune quickly complied. Jiraiya, using his chakra to suspend the balloon directly over the Hokage's head, then began to churn the water inside at an ever-increasing rate. I haven't done this since Naruto's Rasengan training, Jiraiya says to the other two shinobi, snickering even more now. Just then the balloon explodes and a torrent of water comes splashing down upon Lady Tsunade. The response was immediate as the Hokage leapt up out of her chair, her blonde hair wet and stringy as it fell in front of her face, and screamed. Shizune, I'll kill you for this. Lady Tsunade then brought her fist down upon the desk, breaking it in two upon its impact. As she pulled her hair away from her eyes to find out where her assistant was at, she saw Shizune cowering behind Kakashi in the far corner of the room, pointing to something and shaking her head from side to side. She turned to look where Shizune was pointing at and immediately began to grind her teeth at what she saw. A lazy, good-for-nothing perverted old man sitting in a chair, trying his best to stifle his laughter. Jiraiya, you had better have a good reason for being here and doing this to me, because you're about 5 seconds away from being nothing more than a bad memory. Tsunade angrily says, as she began to step through the destruction that was once her desk to get to the Toad Sage. Jiraiya immediately leapt up and, holding his hands in front of him, palms forward, said. Whoa Tsunade, slow down. I'm here because you asked me to be here for a 10 o'clock meeting. Now, as for the way you were awakened, I just couldn't think of another way to do it. Funny, I don't remember you getting so upset when Sarutobi-sensei used this method to wake you up. I was a child and he was an adult, I've grown up since then, you idiot. Tsunade growled, as she slumped back into her chair. You could have fooled me. Jiraiya muttered under his breath as he too sat down again. What was that? Tsunade shouted towards Jiraiya, her anger beginning to boil again. Nothing Tsunade, just agreeing with you that you have grown up. In fact, it's never been more apparent to me than right now. Jiraiya lasciviously says, as he begins to leer at Tsunade's drenched blouse. Lady Tsunade looks down to see what Jiraiya is staring at and quickly realizes the objects of his vision. She grabs the empty sake bottle and hurls it towards him, missing his head by mere inches, and shouts. You old pervert, I may kill you yet. Even if I do need you for this mission. What mission is that and am I involved with it? Kakashi asks, as he pulls up a chair to sit down in. Oh yes, Kakashi, I forgot you were here. As for your question, I don't know yet. Please sit down. I wanted to discuss it and some other things with you. However, first things first, Shizune, bring me a towel and one of the spare desks from the other room in here. Tsunade says, her voice beginning to lessen in intensity. Shizune quickly wheels in another desk, pushing the remnants of the previous one out of the way, and hands Tsunade a towel. Who quickly uses it to dry out her hair and then to cover her wet clothing, much to the disappointment of Jiraiya. After a couple of minutes, Tsunade finally says, "Well, Kakashi, how is your jaw? No permanent damage, I hope." "No, thank you, Lady Tsunade, it's been tended to." Kakashi politely replies, as his thoughts begin to drift towards Kurenai. Suddenly, Tsunade's voice snaps him out of his deep daydream. "Kakashi, Kakashi, are you sure you're alright? You kind of spaced out there for a moment. Maybe I should have the medic nins check you out after this meeting. I might have hit you harder than I thought. Even if you did somehow manage to block a portion of it." "Really, Kakashi? You managed to block one of Tsunade's haymakers? That's impressive, my boy, not many people have done that." Jiraiya says with amusement. "Shut up, Jiraiya," Tsunade says, annoyed both at the fact that Kakashi had blocked her punch and at the fact that Jiraiya was complimenting him on the feat. "Anyway, Kakashi, I apologize. I overreacted without having all the facts, which I tend to do when it comes to my Naruto-kun. Please forgive me. I've completely forgotten about it, Lady Tsunade. Please don't trouble yourself anymore in regards to it." Kakashi calmly states. "Right, now that that's out of the way, let's talk about what an interesting day you had yesterday," Tsunade says in an official tone, as Kakashi begins to squirm a little bit in his chair. "I understand you disbanded Team Number 7 and resigned as sensei yesterday. Tell me, Kakashi, what are your plans now? If kicking the crap out of the Haruno clan is your new vocation, I've got to tell you I don't think there are that many left. I think there might be a couple of cousins and possibly a grandmother you haven't met yet. I can get you their addresses before you leave if you wish," Tsunade says, trying to stifle a giggle as she says it. "That won't be necessary, Lady Tsunade. I am sorry if any of my actions yesterday caused you any problems. In fact, I've brought you this bottle of sake as a token of my apology, and I would be happy to try and explain my actions in full if you would like," Kakashi replies in as polite a tone as he can muster. Lady Tsunade accepted the bottle and looked at the label. Her eyes grew wide in surprise and said to Kakashi, "You apologize? Well, Kakashi, this is a very fine vintage of sake. Let's get some glasses," as she yells to Shizune to bring some in. Tsunade's mouth was almost watering in anticipation of drinking this sake. Shizune entered with a tray and 3 porcelain cups and sets it down upon Tsunade's desk before leaving again. "As for explaining your recent troubles, shall we say, with the Haruno clan, there is no need. Jiraiya has already told me what happened in the Sakura incident. As for the rest, the Anbu reports I've been reading give me a pretty good idea as to what transpired. Now, let's crack open this bottle and discuss your future, shall we?" Tsunade said with a gleam in her eye and voice. As Kakashi watched Lady Tsunade open the bottle and begin pouring the sake into the cups, his thoughts once again drifted back to Kurenai. "Smart and beautiful, you're the whole package, Kurenai. Your sake probably just saved Mai from a very uncomfortable situation," Kakashi quietly thought to himself. "A toast to the speedy recovery of one Naruto Uzumaki," Jiraiya bellows, as he drains his cup in one gulp. "I'll drink to that," Tsunade says, as she clinks cups with Kakashi and they both down their own sake. "You'll drink to anything, Tsunade," Jiraiya laughingly says, as he downs another cup of sake in one quick motion. "I suggest you keep your opinions to yourself, Jiraiya. I still haven't decided yet if you're gonna make it out of this office alive or not," Tsunade, annoyed once again at her fellow Sannin, says, before downing another cup of sake in quick succession herself. "Now, Kakashi, since you've dissolved Team Number 7, I can't have one of my best Junin sitting around all day with nothing to do. I have a job in mind for you, but I want to hear your thoughts first about what you have planned," Tsunade states, while pouring sake into everyone's cup for another round of drinks. Kakashi quickly drinks his cup of sake before answering the question, in somber yet hopeful tone says, "I've given this a great deal of thought, and with your permission, Lady Tsunade, and yours as well, Master Jiraiya, I wish to help in completing Naruto's training on a full-time basis. The powers and skills he has developed in such a short amount of time led me to believe he could become one of the greatest shinobi this village has ever produced. I also believe that we are going to need his strength and skills in the future for the Leaf Village to continue to exist. Kakashi quietly puts down his cup and crosses his arms, as he anxiously awaits a reply from both Sannin. After waiting what seemed like an eternity, Tsunade finally spoke. Okay Kakashi, that answers my question of what you want to do. Now I want you to tell me why you want to do this. Kakashi gives pause a moment, as he unfolds his arms and places his right hand under his chin before saying. I don't know if this is a satisfactory answer to your question Lady Tsunade, let's just say I owe it to Naruto, and leave it at that. No Kakashi, I can't leave it at that, I need more. Tsunade says, before drinking another cup of sake. The truth of the matter Lady Tsunade is this. Naruto has a dream of one day becoming Hokage. I believe that it is a dream worth having. I failed him as a sensei, wait that's not quite right. I failed all of my students as a teacher. But, I feel I failed Naruto most of all and I want to rectify the mistakes I've made. It is a selfish reason I realize Lady Tsunade, but my one hope or goal in life now is to help Naruto achieve his dream, if I'm given the chance to do so. I will abide to whatever you and Master Jiraiya decide my fate to be, but what I've told you is what I desire most. Kakashi states with sincerity and determination, as he looks to the Hokage for her answer. Lady Tsunade finishes another cup of sake before setting it down to look directly at Kakashi. After a moment, a wry smile begins to spread across her face and she says. A good answer Kakashi, and I concur with your thought process. In fact it makes the job I had in mind for you that much easier. Jiraiya approached me last night and requested that I to him a high-level Junin to help him complete Naruto's training. He stated that he needed someone with exceptional skills for Naruto to train with and against for him to reach his maximum potential. Jiraiya suggested you, since Naruto holds you in such high regard already. And as much as it pains me to say, we're going to need Naruto to improve a great deal for the battles I fear are coming our way. Between Orochimaru and Sasuke, not to mention the Akatsuki, the Sound Village and God knows what else. I'm afraid the Leaf Village is heading towards a dark period in its history and Naruto may be our only hope to survive. So Kakashi, have another drink. I do hereby grant your request, but remember this. If you screw up again with Naruto, there's going to be hell to pay from me you got that. Now, finish your drink and go see your student, I've got some things to discuss with the pervert sage in private. Kakashi quickly downs his drink and bows before the two legendary Sannin and says. Thank you Lady Tsunade, and thank you Master Jiraiya for the opportunity to help Naruto and perhaps redeem myself as well. With that said, Kakashi begins to leave the office before Tsunade's voice stops him. Wait Kakashi, I almost forgot. There is still one matter we need to discuss, Sakura. Kakashi pauses upon hearing this and without turning back says in a stern voice. Lady Tsunade, I've already said everything I wish to on that subject. I will no longer be her sensei and that is final. But Kakashi, I've already heard about what she said to Naruto yesterday, and I'm pretty pissed off about it myself. However, the fact of the matter is, she also possesses a great deal of skill and strength and could develop into a very powerful shinobi one day as well. And as we've already discussed, this village is going to need as many talented shinobi as we can produce for the days that we fear are coming. Tsunade expertly states, waiting for Kakashi to answer. After a brief pause Kakashi looks back and says. I understand your concern over Sakura's development. However, my feelings towards this matter dictate that I can no longer be her sensei, and it goes much deeper than what she said yesterday. I already suggested to the girl that she seek out Guy, Asuma, or Kurenai to continue her training. But as far as I am concerned, my relationship with Sakura Haruno is finished. Very well Kakashi. I won't force anything upon you. You may leave. I'll deal with the Sakura situation at some point in the near future. On your way out, tell Shizune I'm not to be disturbed for the next couple of hours. Thank you, Lady Tsunade, I shall. Kakashi politely says, as he exits the office, closing the doors behind him. As Kakashi shut the doors behind him, he leans back and breathes a sigh of relief. Shizune, sitting at her desk, noticed this and decided to poke a little fun at him. So the mighty Kakashi managed to survive. I'm very impressed. Shizune said laughingly. Kakashi looked over at Shizune and, rolling his eyes sarcastically, said, Thank you, Shizune. You have no idea how much it means to me knowing that I impressed you. For you see, it's every shinobi's dream in this village to impress the all-powerful secretary of the Hokage. Now that I've achieved it, I can mark it off my life's list of goals to attain. Shizune, looking slightly annoyed upon hearing Kakashi's reply, responds in like fashion with a smirk on her face. Keep it up, mister, and I'll send you back into the office for the butt kicking I'm sure you were expecting to receive today. That would not be wise. Lady Tsunade asked me to tell you she isn't to be disturbed for the next 2 hours, and she seemed quite earnest in that request. Besides, I need to go see Naruto right now. Kakashi replies in a serious tone, as he turns to leave. Damn, I still need Tsunade to sign off on some of these reports. Maybe I'll sneak in and have her do it right now before her 2-hour hiatus begins. Shizune says, as she grabs some reports off her desk and heads towards the Hokage's office. Before entering, she stops and calls out to Kakashi before he exits the room. Kakashi, can you do me one small favor when you see Naruto? Please give him my love. I mean tell him I'm thinking of him. Shizune says, in a soft yet sad tone of voice. Kakashi, a bit confused at the tone of her request, answers as sincerely as possible. I shall, Shizune. He then leaves the room to head over to the hospital. Thank you, Kakashi. Shizune silently thinks to herself, as she wipes a tear away from her eye and begins to open the door to the Hokage's office. The sight she beheld would forever be burned into her memory. The vision Shizune's eyes were fixated on in total shock was of Lady Tsunade leaning against her desk, her eyes screwed shut, clutching Jiraiya's face to her ample chest, quietly moaning in pleasure. Meanwhile, Jiraiya was making very distinctive sucking and slurping noises while attempting to remove his own clothing. Shizune stifled her scream, as she covered her eyes in blatant horror and attempted to retreat to whence she came, silently closing the door behind her. The image she witnessed and what it meant would haunt her for the rest of her life. It was start of the lunch hour at Konoha Hospital when Kakashi arrived. Upon leaving Lady Tsunade's office, he had walked the streets of the Leaf Village for a bit, trying to think of what he was going to say to Naruto. Eventually, he came within the vicinity of Naruto's favorite restaurant, Ichiraku Ramen. Kakashi knew that Naruto would certainly enjoy some takeout, as opposed to the food he would receive at the hospital. So, after purchasing a large quantity of Naruto's favorite ramen dishes, he set off for the hospital and a conversation with his student that was long overdue. Before Kakashi even reached Naruto's room, he could hear him arguing with the nurse about the quality and taste of the food they were serving to him. I don't care what you say, I'd sooner starve than eat that stuff. Take it away, the smell alone is going to make me puke. And with that said, Naruto folded his arms and grimaced his face into the most stubborn look he could achieve. Fine, Naruto, we'll just see what the doctor has to say about this. The nurse replied as she took the tray and began to leave. Well, give him this message about the food from me, THWPPPPPPPP. As he stuck his tongue out and gave the raspberry to the exiting nurse. Kakashi had just reached the door at this point and narrowly avoided bumping into the obviously annoyed nurse. He stepped through the doorway and announced, Ichiraku Ramen to the rescue. When Naruto heard those 5 words, he began to grin from ear to ear and began to say, Kakashi-sen, before pausing a moment as his smile lessened and in a more subdued tone said, Kakashi, is that really Ichiraku's ramen? Kakashi's heart sank a little bit at Naruto's greeting. It was the first time he had ever addressed him without the title sensei. He knew right then that Naruto must have already learned about what happened yesterday. He wasn't upset at Naruto, he had no right to be. However, The sting he felt upon hearing his greeting hit Kakashi harder than he had ever imagined it would. Kakashi only hoped that Naruto would be far more understanding with him than he had ever been with Naruto. Quickly shaking off his angst, he pulled up a chair next to Naruto and said, "You bet it is all your favorites and some vegetables too." "Ugh, you just had to include some vegetables," Naruto said with a groan. "You can't become the next Hokage on ramen alone, Naruto." Kakashi replied, "I can't become the next Hokage without a teacher either, so what's the point?" Naruto dejectedly says. Kakashi winced when he heard this. There would be no easing into this conversation with Naruto. True to his nature, Naruto was as blunt and direct to the point as ever. Kakashi slowly got up while Naruto quietly ate and locked the door to the room. This was going to be a private talk with Naruto. He then came back and sat back down by Naruto before taking a deep breath, as he began to speak. "Naruto, I take it you've heard about me disbanding Team Number 7 and resigning as sensei. I want to apologize to you for hearing about that from anyone but me. It's one of the many things I came here today to talk to you about. I'll try to explain my reasons for that decision, and I only hope that you understand," Kakashi says in a penitent voice. Naruto stops eating and looks at his former sensei and quietly says, "I already understand the most important mission I've been assigned to and I failed it, because I choked. I could have completed it, but I couldn't follow through. If I were in your position, I wouldn't want to train a traitor, his fangirl, or a loser either. You don't have to explain anything, Kakashi-sensei. I mean Kakashi." As Naruto drops his head in shame, he hears Kakashi ask him to look at him. The sting Kakashi had felt earlier was nothing compared to the hurt he felt at that moment. As Naruto slowly lifted his head to face him, Kakashi said, "You're wrong, Naruto. I do need to explain this to you and some other things as well. But first, I need to know what happened out there. Why do you think you failed? I don't. I've read the reports from the others. I know everyone and especially you were put into an almost impossible situation to succeed. Why do you blame yourself? Because it is my fault that the mission failed in the end. You see, I could have brought Sasuke back. I'll tell you what happened and then you'll realize that fact." Naruto replies in earnest, and then begins his tale. "The fight with Sasuke was tooth and nail the whole way. As hard as I fought to bring him back and keep my promise to Sakura, he fought just as hard to leave and join up with that snake bastard. I tried to talk him out of doing this during the battle, but he just wouldn't listen. In the end, he began charging up his Chidori to a level one had never seen before and said he was going to kill me. He said he had no choice, it was the only way he could attain the Mangekyo Sharingan. I responded by charging up my Rasengan, and then he charged at me screaming the whole way. I then charged at him and when we met is when I choked and doomed the mission to failure." "What do you mean you choked, Naruto?" Kakashi asks. "I mean I had charged my Rasengan up to a point where I could have taken him out, maybe even killed him. I had a direct bead on his chest, but at the last possible instant, I pulled up and hit him in his forehead protector instead. I just couldn't go through with it and possibly kill him. I really thought he was my friend and I believed that he would pull up as well. Well, you saw the results of that brilliant belief on my part. So, now do you understand? You always taught us that the mission comes first. If I had followed through like a true shinobi would have, instead of the failure I am, the mission would have been completed. Then you wouldn't have to be ashamed to be the sensei of this team anymore, or of me." Naruto finishes saying, the regret evident in his voice. Kakashi sits in muted shock trying to absorb everything Naruto has just told him. Finally, after a minute, he lifts his head and in a voice filled with pride says, "You're wrong, Naruto. I'm not ashamed to be your sensei. In fact, after what you've just told me, I can't begin to describe how proud I am of your actions on this mission. Proud Kakashi-sensei, but why I failed the mission? You failed nothing, Naruto. I did teach you that the mission comes first, but didn't I also teach you that those who don't care about their comrades are worse than those who don't follow the rules?" Kakashi says with determination. "Yeah, you did, Kakashi-sensei. It was during the bell test, right? I guess I forgot about that. Naruto replies. Naruto, you may not have consciously remembered it, but in the end your actions proved you understood it. No, the only people who failed to remember that principle were your teammates. I need you to understand and believe this when I tell you that I feel no shame towards you or how you conducted yourself on this mission. The only shame I feel is in your teammates and in myself for failing to instill into them what you already know. The only failure in this room right now is me. I didn't disband Team Number 7 to stop being your sensei, Naruto. I did it because I wanted to be your sensei on a full-time basis. You're the only student I have whose nindo is both worthy and honorable. I'm going to do all I can to help you become stronger and be the next Hokage. I didn't do a very good job in helping you in the past, but I'm going to make up for that now, if you'll let me. Kakashi states emphatically with hope in his voice. Naruto sat in his hospital bed staring at his sensei in disbelief. He had been so sure that he had failed Kakashi that it had to be the reason why he would dissolve the team and resign. He didn't know what to say. To hear his teacher tell him how proud he was of him was something rare in Naruto's life. Only Yumi no Irake had ever expressed any pride towards him before in the past. After a moment, Kakashi's final words began to sink in and Naruto began to smile again and gleefully asks. Do you mean it, Kakashi-sensei? You really want to train me alone, full time? I do Naruto more than anything, but I have to tell you, we won't be alone. In fact, I'll be more like an assistant sensei and training partner for you. We'll both be under the tutelage of the legendary Sannin Jiraiya. Kakashi replies. Pervy sage, is he really that good? Naruto asks. I know you have a hard time believing this, Naruto, but Jiraiya is one of the greatest shinobi to ever live. I truly believe that with his guidance, you can one day even surpass your father and also become a legendary shinobi in your own right. Kakashi says with confidence. My father? You know who my father is, Kakashi-sensei? Naruto bolts up asking.